We are in the middle of Torah Yud Aleph, Ani Hashem Hu Sh'mi. We were in the middle of explaining we're halfway through explaining the story of Rabbi Bar Chana and how it fits into the story. We explained what the bird is, we explained what the water is, we explained that which they said, there is no water, the water is so shallow, there's no water. And that no water means that they nullified the ego and the self. The water represents the person and the physical aspect of man. And no water means that they nullified that self. And then now we're up to the part in the story where they said that we wanted to dive in order to cool ourselves off. So what's this cooling ourselves off? And we explained this a little bit yesterday at the end, that the word Likutei Moharan means the word for cooling ourselves off has the same connotation, sounds like the same word as kavod, as the word in Aramaic for kavod. It's not just in Aramaic, but it's also a pasuk in Yeshayahu, where it says over there, Okir enosh mipaz, that I will make man more honorable than gold, than fine gold. Okay, Okir enosh mipaz. Okir means to respect, to honor. And we see this in the Gemara also in regards to how a person should respect his wife in order to be wealthy. The Gemara says, should respect and honor your wives in order to become wealthy. You shall become wealthy from this. And so this word le'akurei nafshin, it sounds like the word for kavod, for honoring. Okir. And obviously this word comes from the word in Hebrew, yakar. Yakar means valuable. And when you are honoring somebody, you're acting towards them as if they are valuable. You're showing respect. It means that you are valuing that person. Something that's valuable, you act in a different way than something that has no value to it. And so that's what it's speaking about. That kurei nafshin, in order to cool ourselves, but it also means hainu liyot shafal ve'anav. Hainu leshon okir enosh mipaz. Hainu shaya ha'anava bishvil gadlut kedei litkabed u'lityaker. כי מחמת שיודעים גודל ביזוי הגדלות, על כן הם ענבים בשביל להתכבד ולהתייקר על ידי הענבה, וזהו בחינת העניבות שהוא תכלית הגדלות. So this is something that Rebbe Nachman speaks about in many places, the idea of how sometimes a person has achieved and accomplished tremendous feats in his avodat Hashem, tremendous spiritual levels he has achieved. And he has rectified all of the midot, all the character traits, right? He has all the wonderful character traits that the Chazal speak about. And now that he recognizes his great self that has been perfected in all these aspects of avodat Hashem and all these aspects of serving Hashem and all this tikkun hamidot, now this wonderful person also realizes that 1 second, I'm not completely perfect yet. There's still another character trait that I can honor myself with. And what is that? That's anava. That's humility. I'm still not the greatest Bal Anava in the world. I'm still not the most humble in the world. So then he goes ahead and he learns about Anava, he learns about humility. And then when he achieves that, when he makes himself an Anav, he is the biggest Balagaiva in the world. He has the greatest pride and the greatest ego and the most arrogance in the world. Because all of his Anava, all of his humility was in order. The reason why he is in this Anava is the reason behind it, right? And Midot, the most important thing is what's the reason behind it. It's not about the midah itself. Many times, and most of the time, most importantly, you have to know what's the source of the midah. And so here, that's the source of his humility is most greatest arrogance. He's so arrogant that now he's going to put the diamond on the crown, so to speak, and he's going to add to his greatness by being so humble. You see this a lot by You see this a lot. You see this a lot, and you see this especially much by people that, spiritual people that and not just Jewish, not just by Jewish circles, also by the non-Jewish circles, and the non-Jewish circles even more obviously. Not obviously, I'm not saying that, no, but you see it in both places by people that are all into the self-development and self-improvement and you know, becoming more spiritual, people that go to all these seminars and all these things, and many times the one that is giving the seminar, many times the guru, so to speak, he is the biggest, he has the greatest arrogance, right? Because he is supposed to be, he's already so to speak enlightened, and he is already, he's preaching, and everybody assumes that he practices what he preaches. This is absolutely not true. Most of the things that are being taught by all these gurus and rabbis as well, people assume that if the rabbi is teaching this, so obviously he's on that level. It's not true at all, right? This is what he is hoping to, this what he is aspiring to as well. Okay, but people assume that, and that energy and that feeling, that assumption from his followers, and he himself, many times the leader himself assumes that role as being perfected in all these things, and that can come subconsciously just by constantly leading people and lecturing about all of these topics. Subconsciously they come to feel that they are already perfect in these things that they are teaching, right? And the people and the leader and the people that are following that leader, that guru, you find many times that they have this type of humility, right? So it's a midah that they're rectified, so to speak, quote unquote, right? And they have released their ego, and now they are enlightened. But the reason behind all of this is in order to be more special and more significant than their family that they grew up with, and their friends that they went to high school with, than all of the people around them in their life that maybe succeeded in other aspects of life, and they feel maybe that where's their success? Oh, but now they're close to a guru, and now they're doing all of these meditation retreats and all of these seminars, and now they're enlightened, and look, I don't have the ego, and I love everyone, accept everyone, and all of this is coming from the greatest arrogance possible. So this is something to watch out for, says Rebbe Nachman. He says that this is one of the biggest traps, okay? Because humility means to be humble. Real humility means to be humble, completely humble. There's no reason for being humble. If you have a reason why you are being humble, then that's the ego that has a reason, a self-centered reason in order to be humble. And so you still have that ego that's at the core of it, and that's why. And this is something that you would say, okay, wonderful, thank you, Rabbi Rachamim. That's a wonderful insight, and we'll look out for it, and we'll get over that. And Bezrat Hashem, we'll get over that problem. We won't be worried about it, and we'll get to a point of absolute humility where it even comes from a place of complete humility. And so it's true humility, and we won't have to worry about this again. But that's not true, because Rabbi Nachman explains in different places, and later on we'll see in a few places, and we see this also in the Baal Shem Tov, that before every level in Avodat Hashem that a person ascends to, a person needs to go through all of these midot, all of the klipot, all of the darkness, and all of the challenges, and all of the illusions, and all of the sheker that a person faced at the beginning of ascending to the first level and serving Hashem, connecting to Hashem. A person has to go through that every time as well. It's not always going to be in the same way. It won't always be presented in the same way. But because now you are on a higher level, you may experience it in the same way. So what does that mean? That means that, for example, the Gemara speaks about someone that has gaiva. Gaiva, we're speaking about pride, about arrogance. It is as if he slept with a married woman. That's what the Gemara says. Eshet ish. Okay? So, obviously, if someone has that type of challenge, that type of Yitzhahara, right, to have immoral relations with a married woman, so then that is very different than having arrogance. It's completely different. It seems to us it's a completely different experience of darkness. It's a completely different level of darkness than an innocent arrogance that falls into this person's heart. What is so bad about that, right? To us, it seems on the face of things, it's like worlds apart. But when that tzaddik reaches a high level in serving of Hashem, and he is faced with the challenge of arrogance, he is the challenge of gaiva, and that could be a very small level of gaiva. To him, he experiences that darkness and that challenge. It's as if it's a Yetzirah of Eshet Ish, married woman. Okay, and so that's the point. And so therefore we see, and so why am I saying this? I'm saying this because something very interesting that we see, that the Baal Shem Tov, before the Baal Shem Tov passed away, his last words were, Al tevo'eni regel ga'ava v'yadu sha'ima tenideni. A pasuk in Tehillim, that he's praying to Hashem. David HaMelech is praying to Hashem, that please Hashem save me from gaiva, from pride and arrogance. And these were the last words of the Baal Shem Tov. The holy Baal Shem Tov on his deathbed, in the last breaths of his life on this world, and he's praying to the Ribbon Shalom to save me from gaiva. How do you understand such a thing? The point is that before you ascend to a higher level, you're always presented with those challenges, those klipot, that sheker, the falsehood, okay? And that's the hester, the concealment before the revelation, before the gilui. And now what's also pretty interesting, I think it's pretty interesting, that the Arizal, before the Arizal passed away, his last words were, in his last breaths, he prayed the same prayer as the Baal Shem Tov, but he also prayed to Hashem to save him from arrogance, from the pride, from gaiva. But he prayed it not in Hebrew, he prayed it in Ladino, which was the language that he spoke, which was the language that the Sephardim spoke at that time. Up till about, 50, 60 years ago, even in Morocco, a lot of the Sephardim would speak their Ladino. And it's like a Latino, it's like Spanish mixed in with some Hebrew and some Arabic. And so, first of all, part of the significance of that story is that also the holy Arizal, Malach Elokim, the angel of Hashem, this is on his last breaths, and he's praying to Hashem to save him from gaiva. And also, it's interesting that he spoke it in his own language, and this is another proof that Rabbi Nachman says in many places about how a person should have his personal prayer with Ribbon Shalom throughout the day and at a specific time, especially during the day, in your own language. You don't have to go out of your way to say it in Hebrew. He says, speak it in the language that you spoke at home when you grew up, when you were born. Mamalushin, as they say in Yiddish, right? Your mother's tongue. And that's the language is closest to your subconscious mind and closest to your heart. And that's the point here. The point here is to reprogram the parts of our psyche and our consciousness that are deep within our heart and our feelings and our emotions, and they are connected to what actually makes change take place. And so this is what he's saying here. He's saying here that we should pay what happened when they were saying we said late Maya, there's no water, and meaning that they wanted to nullify the ego. But then Baila Kuri Nafshin, when we were saying there is no water, and when we were trying to nullify the ego, we were doing it from a place of ego. We were doing it from a place of building ourselves, of becoming better people. That's what all of the self-development and self-improvement movement is all about. All these people that go to seminars and their intention is to become a better, more wonderful person, right? Depends on why you're becoming a better person and how you're becoming a better person and what's the reason behind it in the emotion and the energy of the heart, right? It could be that you desire to be included in the true existence and the true essence of the Ribbon Shalom. So you're absolutely recognizing that you are not there, right? It could be that you're recognizing that you're not there is only to be more enlightened, in order to be better. So what does a person do with all this? And that's why the Baal Shem Tov said that the only eitzah, the only real advice to be saved from gaiva is through prayer. Because humility is not about being a nothing. It's not about being someone that drags himself on the floor and and dresses and rags and all that. Obviously, I mean, we have stories about tzaddikim and Passion Nation that did that, but that's not the important point of humility. That's the outside, and that's the most insignificant parts of being humble. The true humility is when a person is completely nullified to the chiyos of the neshama. It's a state of deep dveikus. It's a state of absolute inclusion within the divine, within the Ribbon Shalom, not coming from a place even slightly. There is not even a slight feeling of I'm doing this for myself. And one of the ways that you can see that is when a person gets out of that enlightened state, that deep meditation, are they going to go and use that to fulfill the Ratzon of Hashem, to fulfill the Torah and the mitzvah? Or are they going to say, hey, one second, look, I'm enlightened and I'm having these spiritual experiences and that's good enough for me. So, but if I'm going to actually truly seek to be in service to Hashem and not the opposite way, because Gaiva is all about the opposite paradigm, where Hashem is here for me, and therefore even the spirituality is being used to make me a better person, to make me a more wonderful person, a more enlightened being. But if after I come out of that spiritual experience, that brings me to find ways to be serving Hashem more, to bring more glory to the Ribbon Shalom, so that's one of the markers, that's one of the signs that, oh, might be here some truth, some aspects of truth in this humility. So these are things to pay attention to, and these are things to be aware of, right? Awareness is the first step in coming to humility. So, but them here in this story, it was in order to honor themselves, in order to add to the honor of their ego, in order to build up their ego. So what happened? And so we wanted to dive, we wanted to go low, we wanted to become humble, make ourselves humble. That's the important word here. Making yourself humble, right? Instead of just a person just recognizing that he is nothing, right? And when they did that, the intention was in order to make themselves prominent and more important by being greater, more enlightened beings. Okay, because obviously arrogance is a despicable habit. It's a despicable trait, character trait. And as they say in Yiddish, it's a pass nicht, right? It doesn't pass for me. It's not appropriate for someone of my esteem, of my great prominence, to have gaiva. So this heavenly voice called out and said, "Don't go down into here. Don't dive into here. So the heavenly voice is warning them that they should not get into this humility that is coming from a place of in order to gain prominence and glory, because that type of humility is the highest degree of arrogance. דנפלה חצינה לבן הגרה השווה שנין ולמה עתיר לערה, שהבת כל הודיע להם שורש הגדלות כדי שיתרחקו את קצה האחרון, ולה יחותו לאחר שלא יהיו ענבים בשביל גדלות, כמאמר חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה, מאוד מאוד אפי שבר רוח, היינו שהודיעם להם שהגדלות הוא מנפילות ההתפארות והגאווה של הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא לבושו כמו שכתוב, השם מלך גאות לבש, דנפלה חצינה מבחינת לבוש כמו שכתוב וחיצנו מהמר. So he says that this heavenly voice is teaching them what is the source of gaiva, what is the source, the root of arrogance, in order to help them to distance themselves and purify themselves from this arrogance and completely, into the absolute utmost, purify themselves from arrogance. How? What did it tell them? What did it teach them? It taught them that the aspect of gaiva is from the midah of Hashem's splendor, the midah of Hashem's tiferet, the tiferet of Hashem, the splendor of Hashem's, right, Hashem's glory, when that is fallen into the klipa, because as we know from the Baal Shem Tov, the whole idea of the fallen midot, the seven kings that fell before the creation, the process of creation of the world, and each one of these seven kings are the seven corresponding to the seven sfirot, And this midah of the Tiferet also fell. And that has also sparks of holiness that are found from this energy of Tiferet, from this energy of Hashem's splendor. It's found within the darkness of the Klippa. And when a person takes that energy of Hashem's glory, of Hashem's splendor, and he takes it for himself, instead of revealing Hashem's glory and sanctifying Hashem's name, and adding to the honor of the Ribbon Shalom, to the Tiferet of Hashem, to the splendor of Hashem, instead of taking that for Hashem and attributing it to Hashem, he's taking it for his own self. So he's taking the clothing of the king. He's taking the clothing of Hashem, because the Sfirot are all different ways that Hashem is revealing himself to the world. Hashem is connecting to the world and allowing himself to be graspable, to be connected to, and to be relatable, so to speak, on some level, to the world, to be able to have a relationship with him through these midot. Obviously, Hashem himself, between him and us, from his perspective, there are no midot, there are no sfirot. It's only from us to him. But he has created these levels of these sfirot, of these energies and metaphors, so to speak, in order for us to relate to him, in order for us to connect to the Ribbon Shalom. And so one of them is the Tiferet, the splendor of Hashem. The glory is one of the ways that we connect to Hashem's divine, infinite essence through this clothing of glory that Hashem has revealed to us as the absolute source of all splendor, of all glory. And when a person takes that for himself, he's taking the clothing of the king and he's taking it for himself. And that's what it is. That's what Gaiva is. It's from the fallen midah of the Tiferet, of the Ribbon Shalom. And we see this in the pasuk in the Elim that says that Hashem enclothed himself, the garment of Hashem enclothed himself with his majesty. Okay, so that's the Geut, is the majesty of Hashem, and that represents the Tiferet, the splendor and the majesty of the Ribbon Shalom. And that's why it's so important. And the Mishnah in Avot tells us, Me'od me'od havishval guach. Very much, very, be very, very humble. It says it twice. Okay, it's because it's extremely important, especially in this midah, which is the sphera that represents the body. It's the spirit that represents the goof. Okay, and so the whole Torah, the whole goof of the Torah is connected to this, to humility. And that's why a person needs to completely purify himself from this aspect. As long as a person, and as much as a person allows that ego, arrogance to be in control and to be pulling the strings of this person, that's how much a person is far from true revelation of Torah and true understanding of Torah, which is what we're speaking about in this Torah. All the idea of the understanding Torah to its absolute depth is dependent. It's completely depending on how much a person has purified himself from the gaiva, from taking this levush of Hashem for himself. Then if ala chatzina, because this axe of the carpenter fell, how do we know that this axe? So Rebbe Nachman explains the axe, it represents the levush. Why is it alluding to the garment? So he brings this pasuk in. He brings this pasuk. Vechitzno me'amer. Vechitzno me'amer. And Vechitzno me'amer is referring to this harvester that he didn't fill his hand or bound the corners of his garment. And the pasuk, the chitzno in this pasuk is referring to the garments, the corner of the garment. Okay, so the chitzno, which is like the same word as nefala chatzina. Chatzina sounds like the chitzno. It's the garment, and so gaiva is the garment of Hashem. The majesty, the majesty, the splendor of Hashem is one of his clothing. Okay, and that's what fell, and it fell 7 years. 7 years is referring to the 7 midot, but we're going to see more about that as well, Hashem, tomorrow. Okay, 1 second.